The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us today. I've got a little bit before 11. We'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes here. For those of you early birds who are joining us, and there are quite a few of you, if you don't mind letting us know where you're dialing in from, we'd really appreciate it. We've got Lee Badman here today and Jim Vada, and we've got a great topic, the very short shelf life of a site survey. So go ahead and use the question and answer pane to let us know city, state, or country, and whether you're working from home or venturing into the office, as some of the areas in the U.S. are closing back down. I'm always interested to hear how that's changing everyone else's work-life balance and so forth. So got a couple of folks down in here from, let's see, we've got Dan in Stockholm, Sweden. Paul, welcome back from PA. I think Dan is a welcome back too, now that I think about it. Andrew, Texas, home, welcome. Craig in Alberta. We got Manpreet in London, another London, or excuse me, we got Sheffield Hallam, welcome. Richard, welcome back. Lewis from New Jersey, West Milford, working from home. Stephen in Houston, Texas, working from home is, Manpreet says he's working from home. He left that out previously. Let's see, hello from the UK, Sam, welcome. Kalpesh from the UK as well. Lots of UK folks, so I'm guessing our friends over in the UK at Open Reality must have put out a nice message getting you all in. We appreciate them. I think there's some folks from Open Reality actually on. Mr. Parsons joining us from Elk Ridge, Utah. Welcome, Keith. Chuck from Liberty, working from home. Welcome, Alan from Hampshire, UK. Harry, working from home in the Netherlands. Awesome. Ahmed from Saudi. Chris, from Surrey again, welcome back. Very cool. Thanks for sending us those, folks. We really appreciate it. Love hearing where everyone's dialing in from. We got a great audience who joins us every week. Some new folks on and some returning folks. We'll go ahead and get started. We've got a great agenda today. We're joined by Lee Badman, CWNE 200. He's a wireless network architect at Syracuse University. And of course, we've got Jim Vada, CWNE 183, who's our Director of Global Wi-Fi Solutions. Good morning, both.
Hey, Don.
Hey, good morning, Don and Jim.
Yes, good morning to all. I'm here in Cleveland. Jim is down in Cincinnati. Lee is closer to Syracuse, though I believe on the outskirts of Syracuse, New York. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I am about 20-ish miles to the west, heading towards Rochester, kind of out in cow country.
Right on. All right, I've got a couple updates that I'll walk through with you all, and then we'll get started with the show here. As always, these webinars are certified through CWNP. So for those of you who are working on your certifications through CWNP, you can use these as CE credits. So these webinars are good for 1 credit. If you're looking for a product tour from 7Signal and just so happen to bump into this webinar, we won't get into product or tours today, nor do we usually on these weekly webinars. We do have a placeholder for these every Friday at noon. You can go to go.7signal.com/tour. They're completely separate from the sales and marketing teams. It's just a straight up demo, no slides. So some of you folks will appreciate that. And then we do post our webinars every week on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe to the 7Signal YouTube channel. And we do post the slides via our Twitter account, so go to @7Signal to get a copy of your slides, and don't forget to follow us, please. We do have a great promotion going on for our Mobileye product. I know we're not getting into the product a little bit. For those of you who are looking to support your work from home users or get more visibility into your endpoints, please take advantage of our 50 for 50 trial. So you can add 50 devices for 50 days. and you're up and running with Mobileye in just 2 short days. So really easy to get going and get started with us. So a little bit about 7Signal. We were founded in Helsinki, Finland in 2007. We've hit a lot of major milestones along the way. We're now crunching 1 billion data points on a daily basis. We're on over 5 million devices. We're on a heck of a lot of wireless networks, over 200 customers around the world, certified, homologated in over 40 countries. We are GDPR compliant, so we are also staying relevant with our privacy standards as well as our technology stack. We've got 14 patents. So the technology you see from 7Signal, you are only going to see from 7Signal. And we're here because the digital experience of your end users is largely connected to their connectivity. And we provide visibility into your end user experiences and connectivity unlike any other solution on the market. Completely AP and device agnostic, and we take an outside-in approach to our technology, and we'll get into more of that in a second. So what we're doing is we're using our technology to find the top 7, or what we call the top 7 Wi-Fi problems. Everything having to do with a wireless issue will bubble up to one of these 7 problems. And we're looking at these things uniquely in this space. So they may present themselves differently. For those of you who are not wireless engineers, I'm one of them on this call. So you may get a help desk call that's hey, I can't connect, or the Wi-Fi is slow, or it's intermittent. There's a reason for it, and it bubbles up to one of these 7 issues: coverage, congestion, roaming, etc. And how we're doing it is we're running active and passive tests on the network and on the devices for things like packet loss, latency, and jitter, delivering a full spectrum analysis, looking at your MOS scores for voice over IP. So if you're looking at it from a LAN infrastructure standpoint, this is your traditional setup. And for those of us on the call that may not be 7Signal customers, you're looking at the infrastructure from the inside out. You've got solutions on the network, SolarWinds, AppNeta, others that are living on the controllers, on the switches, on the app servers for problems. And those are great. You get great information from those sorts of solutions. But 7Signal, we live on the outside of the network. We're on the devices. We're up in the rafters with the access points, monitoring the air and the RF. So our Mobileye agents get a different perspective than what your infrastructure is saying. The same goes for our Mobileye sensors, though you do get really good insight into the network services, but more outside-in visibility into your service level and your RF visibility. So side-by-side comparison of our modules really quick here. Mobileye on the left, Sapphire Eye on the right. Mobileye is our agent that lives on the device, a Windows, Mac, Android, and mini PC for non-traditional operating systems. So we have robotics and forklifts and just lots of stuff going on in IoT. So Mobileye also installs on those little tiny mini PCs if you cannot install it directly onto the device itself. 100% software based, and it's looking for those 5 Wi-Fi problems at the bottom in red. Same goes for Sapphire Eye. That is our perfect client or sensor that lives up in the rafters with the access points, gives you a full spectrum analysis. That is our software-enabled hardware, and it's monitoring those 5 problems. Together, they find all 7 Wi-Fi problems, and we're the only vendor in this space to offer such a suite. So with that said, we're going to get on with the show today. I'm going to pass the controls over to Mr. Badman. And if Jim, if you don't mind introducing our speaker today, that'd be great.
Yeah, happy to. So Lee Badman, if you don't know him, he is CWNE number 200, nice round number there. Something tells me that was coordinated somehow, but who knows? He is a wireless network architect at a major higher education institution here in the US. He's a very prolific blogger and a very entertaining blogger. If you can imagine making networking and Wi-Fi content actually fun to read, Lee manages to pull that off. So check out his blog at wiredknot.wordpress.com, and follow him on Twitter, also at wiredknot. He is entertaining and funny, and my favorite quality about him is he's not afraid to tell the hard truths about APs and clients, and name and shame. So those are great qualities. One last thing, Lee is a ham radio operator, and 2 years ago I sat in his WLPC deep dive into ham radio and RF tricks for the Wi-Fi engineer, and I kind of got the bug for amateur radio, and this summer I went through and I got my amateur radio license, and now I'm annoying my family by operating my little 8-watt Bofang throughout the day. So thank you, Lee, for that. And today he's assumed a new nickname. He is now Lee the Product Badman. So he's all about marketing now. He's really into buzzwords and corporate speak, and he's going whole hog into that, from what I understand. Is that right, Lee?
Yes, the product thanks you, Jim. Well, thank you for all of that. It's a lot there to take in, but thanks, and I'm glad the radio stuff is working out. Boy, when that bug bites, it can bite hard. So hopefully it brings you a lot of enjoyment.
Thanks, Lee.
All right, shall we begin?
Yep.
Indeed.
All right, guys. So good morning, everybody. Topic is in front of you. Hopefully my screen is showing. Let's make sure that that is the case. Still figuring out this new Mac and digging in here. Yeah, I've been around. I don't know it all. Happy to share ideas, learn from other people. Happy to engage, and by all means reach out and you'll get an answer. So without further ado, we're going to talk about what I am calling the short shelf life of the site survey. Surveys, as everybody knows, anybody who does wireless knows how important the survey is. It's one of those fundamental things that's just basically part of wireless life. But to me, it can also be fraught with misconception. One thing I think about is if you take like a land survey, you're having a piece of property surveyed, the word survey, and the results of that are going to be pretty static and pretty unchanging. You're going to have your borders, you're going to have your survey markers. You come back, 15, 20, 100 years from now, not a lot is going to have changed if qualified people are doing the survey. Very, very static. As opposed to that, you take one of our wireless surveys, and to me, it's more like kind of dipping your thumb into the wind stream, kind of getting a look at the weather at a given point in time, kind of doing a tape recording, if you will, of the way things are at the point you're doing the survey. I also find that a lot of people get caught up in the mechanics of doing the survey. Caught up in trying to make the tool do just something just so and blah blah blah, so much so that sometimes you'll lose sight of what's actually being done when you get lost in the tool and the mechanics. So there's a lot that goes into the topic, what I'm calling the short shelf life, and hopefully we can demystify where I'm coming from, and hopefully we can also get some discussion going. But the bottom line is a survey is not forever. So when I say site surveys, make sure that we get the right reference point for the rest of the discussion. I know just the notion of predictive surveys, just that lexicon alone can kind of rub people the wrong way. I'm not talking about predictive design, where you sit at your desk and you take a building that doesn't exist yet and you import floor plans and plot out a bunch of stuff and predict the way things are going to be. To me, that's not a survey. So we're going to throw that right out from this discussion. We're talking about real surveys of live environments, and I won't read you every bullet, but there's a lot of reasons to do this. You know, maybe you're verifying a design, maybe you're troubleshooting, maybe you inherited, you know, some environment, or you have to get ready for a new, you know, kind of a particular device coming into an environment that's never been there, and you want to make sure it's going to work. Endless reasons to do a survey. But when we talk about surveys for the rest of this discussion, it's basically any exercise that characterizes live signals and reports on them. So hopefully that sits well. And where we're going, you know, surveys and the heat maps, I'm kind of lumping them together. A lot of times that heat map is one of the main deliverables at the end of a survey. It's the one thing that people can latch onto and digest. And, you know, you've proven your work when you hand over a heat map. There's certainly more to a survey, but I'm going to use heat maps a lot in this discussion as I talk about surveys. So we're going to talk about the shelf life. It's in the title. We have to talk about it. We're going to talk about what it provides and what it doesn't provide. Going to get into heat maps and their various aspects, you know, how they get used. But more importantly, or most importantly, perhaps, you know, why surveys are not created equal. You know, why they're not only time limited, or they have a shelf life, but why they're also, you know, one survey is not necessarily equal to the next. Sorry, muted there for a minute so I could cough. So, you know, when we approach the notion that surveys have shelf lives, absolutely, they're not forever. You know, the survey you do today might be invalid as early as this afternoon, or may not be totally valid. I don't want to be reckless and just say it's worthless, but things change quick. Live environments are variable, and that's just something we all have to live with. You know, one easy example, you take an empty stadium, you do a survey. You take a full stadium, do a survey. The results are going to be fundamentally different. Take an open floor plan, do a survey. Before move-in date, all the furniture comes and all of that. Now redo the same survey and you're going to find things are vastly different. There's lots of examples of the variability of environments. And all of those contribute to the shelf life. You know, how long a given survey is quote unquote good for. And we'll talk about more of this. But the last bullet there, I really want to make sure that we all notice. You know, how is the survey tool or the operator changed? You might do a survey with a version of the same tool today, show up 6 months from now, now you've got a different version of that tool, there's been updates, or you have a different person running that tool, even if the version hasn't changed, whatever, and you can come away with fundamentally different results. So there's a lot of nuance here, and you have to recognize that, you know, a lot of this is not, again, back to the LAN survey, it's not that repeatable unless the conditions stay exactly the same and everything stays the same and the same person is doing it, et cetera. But again, we'll get into more of that. So, you know, before I toggle over, let your eyes roam across the screen, and this, you know, these are some key ingredients to why a survey is, you know, shelf life limited. And for the record, this Mac does not have a touch screen. No matter how many times I touch it, it won't advance. There we go.
I can't wait for Apple to invent that and call it
Well,
magical.
yeah, well, I have a Windows PC that has it, and I'm spoiled. I love it. And I know that that's a polarizing topic, but I touch this stupid Mac screen so many times, and it does nothing, and I don't learn. So, so, you know, not to state the obvious, and, you know, some of this will be, but at the same time, it's part of the discussion. What do we actually get out of a survey, right? This is kind of the teaser slide for everything that comes next, and we'll get more into these. But, you know, as I've said before, a survey isn't a thing. It's not something I can hand you. Hey, here's my survey. I can give you a bunch of reports, and I can give you details of what happened when I did the survey. But the actual survey itself is more like a You know, I said the word recording before. It really is. It's like you're recording the environment at a given point in time. So maybe we're using it to validate the design to meet specific criteria. You know, we're gathering the configurations that went into how the environment is acting right now. We're getting all the signals. Yeah, we're getting the heat map and the visual stuff, the visual component at the time of the survey. And basically, we're creating an expectation that we have a general understanding of the infrastructure side that we can hand to somebody and say, yeah, this is what it was when I did it through my eyes, through my understanding of the tool, through my adapter, through my offset set up in the tool, you know, back to the variability. This is what I saw, and you know, maybe you care how I saw it or why I saw it this way, but this is what I saw at that point in time. And then what doesn't a survey provide? Again, you know, there's two sides to every coin. It absolutely does not provide a guarantee of ongoing performance. And this is where we get into some of the misconceptions. You know, my guy was here a couple of weeks ago and he did a survey and everything was good then. So because he did a survey and things were good then, I shouldn't have any problems. I paid for a survey. Well, it just doesn't work that way. It's not a one and done thing. It doesn't guarantee everything. It doesn't lock your conditions to, you know, no variability whatsoever. It doesn't keep people from bringing in partition furniture. It doesn't, you know, stop the shelves of inventory from changing around. You know, it's just silly to think that a survey in and of itself provides any guarantees of anything, right? It's a characterization exercise. It doesn't give us an infallible reference. And if you use it that way, you know, you're kind of doing it at your own, what I call peril, not to be melodramatic. But I've seen this enough times where it kind of bothers me. You know, somebody says, well, I had a survey done. Okay, and? Well, shouldn't everything be good? I took the time to pay for a survey. Yeah, but, you know, there's more to it than that. What do you think that survey actually did for you, other than tell you what was going on at that time and let you know that, you know, you did do a good job of the design you got and all that at the time worked and the configurations worked at the time, but it doesn't make anything last forever in the environment. And as I mentioned before, you know, Jim does a survey and I do a survey. Why would we end up with two different results? Well, you know, are we using the same tool? Do we both have the same level of proficiency on the tool? Did we use the same adapter? Did we use the same offset? Do we have the same understanding of the requirements, right? You know, there's a lot that a survey doesn't provide along with what it does provide. And then the ever popular heat map. I call it functional eye candy. Very, very important. You know, it's not I don't mean to diminish the importance of a heat map by calling it, you know, functional eye candy, but it's a visual approximation of a whole bunch of things when you think about it. You know, and visual stuff is easier to consume than big tables and long reports and all of that. So it is very, very important. But like any map, the representations probably aren't perfect, and they certainly are not forever, like any other part of a survey. It's a good general visual characterization of the wireless LAN. A lot of times it's an RFP requirement, and I, you know, put in parentheses, you know, proof and good. Proof that the survey was good. Again, at that moment in time, if I use the tool right, I can show you, yep, you know, here's my survey. When I did this, everything worked out really good, and here's the proof. You know, kind of beating the point into the ground when I keep saying point in time, but it is, to me, hyper important to understand that. And then also the, just like with the survey itself, the heat map can be influenced by the person creating it and any other number of settings, you know, proof positive of that. This is the same floor plan same AP, same power, same everything. I basically moved one slider so I could make the point. I understood the requirements to be something on you know, the left side, and the next person to do the survey read it a little bit different, and he's on the right side. And even though everything about this is real and identical and carbon copy in reality, if you go to the environment, the visuals come out different. It's just in the way that we use the tool. It's just in the way that something got interpreted. And without context, if I hand this to a customer, the diagram on the right is like, okay, well, this isn't good. I need more APs. I need more power. I need something. You know, white is not good. So, you know, hopefully the point is being made. Then even on the left in the upper, you know, the upper left of the right side on the left floor plan, where we see just a little teeny tiny bit of white. I don't think I can put a cursor over it. I can't. You see just a little teeny bit of white. I guarantee in reality, that is not a dead zone. The coverage there is just fine, but the way that the attenuation sources and everything else got put in for this particular survey leads you to think, if you didn't know better, that we have a dead spot even on the left side. So, you know, a lot goes into this that just is not perhaps precise and can lead to bad conclusions. So, am I throwing dirt at the survey process? No, not really. I'm not saying they have no value. I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form. You know, I'll expound on that a little bit more. But the only way they're going to stay truly consistent is if you do it, you know, T1, then you do it T2, then you do it at T3. The only way you're going to get consistency through those different points in time is if nothing changes. By saying nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. Same person, same tool, same settings, same environment. Nothing has changed. Doors are in the same position they were when you did the first survey. They're either open or they're shut. The metal door has not been replaced with a wooden door. There's not a new filing cabinet, you know, in the boss's office. You know, that's the only way things are going to stay truly consistent. Now, the trick is, does the variability really matter? Are you still meeting requirements? You know, so what if, you know, one cell changed a little bit and the next cell changed in a different way? Is the overall, you know, the overall, what the system equals in the end, is that still good? You know, that's really what's important. But things are going to change. And I've also seen cases where that last bullet there, things changed. I don't understand why they changed. Probably isn't going to sit real well with the people I have to hand the survey to. Maybe I better start changing some of the knobs in the tool so that my second heat map looks a lot like my first heat map. So, you know, I'm saying your surveys and your heat maps will be consistent if nothing changes. And I'm also saying you can achieve the perception of consistency basically by cheating. Unfortunately, that happens, but it's really not good either. So it's not news. Most environments do change. This is where we meet the real world. Again, I won't go through all of the bullets, but any number of adds or changes to the environment will change the survey. It doesn't mean things are bad, things are wrong. It doesn't mean you necessarily need more APs. It doesn't mean whoever did the initial job did something wrong. It just means that the environment changed. And a lot of times the survey is used when we're troubleshooting, or when we're, you know, a lot of times when we're troubleshooting, or when we're doing individual client support, or we're trying to find something that isn't wireless but feels wireless. We find ourselves doing a survey. We should expect changes. We should expect the first survey to not be totally duplicatable because the environments do change. And for whatever reason, I find even, wireless professionals that aren't totally comfortable with that. If something changes, something is wrong. And that's just not the case. So hopefully the point has been made, hopefully pretty clearly. I'm not trying to be a bummer. I'm not trying to downplay the value proposition of surveys. Basically, if a design was really good to begin with, the fact that the survey process is variable shouldn't even really matter that much, right? But anyone involved needs to understand the nuances. Hey, why did my picture change? Hey, why does my heat map look different? Well, this wall was added. This thing happened over here. The initial one was done with an empty auditorium. When I did it this time, you got 400 people in the auditorium. There's reasons for those changes, and people just need to understand that, the visual, the tables that are so boring to read and all of that, the spreadsheets and the textual reports, those changes do not negate their value. And then the question about the NMS generated heat maps, the network management system, your airwaves and your PIs of the world, prime infrastructure, and I forget what the other ones are, but there's Aruba and Cisco for you. Very much so, if you're using RRM, you should expect those heat maps to change, right? That's what RRM does. So variability there absolutely should be expected on occasion. Again, I'm not trying to muddy the water of what a survey is by mentioning them, but it is an important point because it is a source of a heat map. Making sure we're doing okay on time here, and we are. So, for all of this talk about surveys and heat maps, to me, the takeaways hopefully you get from this, the surveys absolutely have value. To say that we could do without them in all but the smallest environments, I don't believe that at all. When they're done right, yes, they absolutely validate designs. Even if you're not doing a full survey, they're absolutely instrumental to troubleshooting, and they just have multiple purposes. Going back to the beginning list of why we do surveys and the different types of surveys, a survey just isn't as simple as a map of where APs are. Each one of those APs has all kinds of stuff going on between power settings and channel settings and timers and thresholds and features that are enabled, both 802.11 based features and then vendor optional features. All of those end up contributing in some shape or fashion to the overall survey. Whether they're important to the survey that you're doing depends on what the requirements are for that survey and what you're trying to validate. But that survey process can be very nuanced and very complicated, or it can be very simple. Channel and power, yep, I got good coverage. All depends on what you're going for. And again, this is why they're not all created equal. They're done for different purposes. They're done to different criteria. The big human component, excuse me, the big human component factor, I don't know why this, I don't want to say it bothers me, but I don't think it's given enough attention overall. We all buy Ekahau, we all buy Tamosoft, we all buy a Sidekick, we all do something, and we get lost in the tool, and we think that the tool makes us a good surveyor, and it just doesn't work that way. We all, the variability that goes on in our minds and our understanding, even of complexities of 802.11, those come out in surveys. So go to a training class where you're doing a survey alongside somebody else, and you find out yours looks different from the next guy. Who's right, who's wrong? Maybe neither, maybe both. All depends on how you went at it, even though you're using the same tools and the same settings and the same everything. You know, don't discount the human component. Sometimes it's almost like the going to a doctor and getting a second opinion. If a survey is that critical and you're the consumer of the survey and it just looks wrong, or you're the boss of a, you know, you're the supervisor of a survey crew and somebody hands you something that just doesn't look right, you know, don't necessarily call the tool into question, but also focus on who's actually using the tool and how they're doing it. And, you know, the human part of it absolutely cannot be discounted. And just remember, you know, the drum beat I've been, you know, banging on all through this, we're sampling the RF at a point in time. And when we talk about RF, for many of us, at least I know in my environments, never has it been more variable. I can go stand in the same exact spot, maybe, you know, 10 times a day, depending on what's going on around me, and it looks just like 10 different environments as far as what's going on at the RF level. And, you know, maybe we all don't have that sort of variability, but many of us do. And you really have to kind of not just do a survey, the point in time, you know, exercise, but you also have to apply some big thinking to it to understand that, okay, if I did this, you know, at another point in the day, or if I did this next week, it's going to look different, and here's why. You know, you have to be able to add that thought to any survey that you either do or consume. And with that, I'm hoping we got some questions.
Nice. That's one of your own drone photography photos, isn't it?
That is Scipio, New York. My wife and I are taking rocks from a farmer's field to improve the shoreline at our camp. While I'm flying the drone, my wife is heaving rocks in the truck, and I'm trying to avoid work and doing like this. But that is Scipio, New York, the New York countryside. The lake in the horizon is a Wasco Lake, and just if anybody thinks all of New York is New York City, I've just proven you wrong.
Beautiful. Well, I want to encourage all of our attendees to use the Q&A panel to ask questions for Lee. We've got a few that have already come in here, Lee. And why don't we start with this one from Steve, who says, how often do you resurvey the same site?
Boy, generally for me, my world is 300 buildings, various numbers of floors, various uses in those buildings. Generally, if there is some kind of new device that's got weird, wonky requirements, like in the stadium we have when they changed scanner types, you know, that was one case where we did a survey just to get a feel for, you know, how did another survey to get a feel for how the new scanner types might behave in the existing environment, and tried to use the survey tool set to emulate the, you know, the new scanner. But generally it's more, once the design is proven, at least for me, if there's not some significant change that's going to happen, whether it be, you know, changing from one, you know, like 11N to 11AC, or, you know, the device thing that I mentioned, usually it ends up being just during troubleshoot and support. Something is so weird and wonky that, you know, we have to go there and try to figure out, well, what changed in this environment? Did a floor plan change that we didn't know about? And a lot of times when you're doing the revisit like that, you know, it's not just the tool that you're staring at and walking around. It's also, you know, you're half using the tool and half just being aware of what's going on, looking for things that looked different from before, and, you know, maybe talking to people. And so, you know, a survey, to me, a survey in that regard is beyond just, you know, what am I seeing in the RF? A lot of it is, you know, talk to people and look around, and you know, use yourself as much of a survey tool as the actual, you know, RF characterization, whatever you're using. But, you know, again, it depends. As a friend of mine would say, it depends.
I like that idea because I've certainly had that experience doing surveys where you ask end users, hey, how's the Wi-Fi around here? Because that often will spur, some interesting discussions. It's rarely, oh, it's perfect, nothing's wrong. They could tell you some things that, they've not called the help desk about, they just deal with, but you might actually be able to fix.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ahmed in Saudi Arabia, and I appreciate you tuning in the evening, Ahmed, has a question. Is there a way to consolidate the output of multiple surveys?
Oh, goodness. I'm going to say it depends. I'm going to say it depends for anything that anybody asks. So I'm just going to mute myself, and Jim, you can say it depends.
The product responds, it depends.
Yes, that's the product's tagline. So this is where you get into the variability of tools, and I can't claim to be a Ekahau power user. I have a feeling that there are ways to do it, but I would also say that it's probably a question better asked to, if we're talking Ekahau specifically, or IB Wave, or Tamasoft, or whatever. I'm sure there's absolutely manual ways to take a bunch of surveys and munge them together and provide a report. There's that. But if you're asking, is there automated ways of doing it, I think it's going to come down to the individual survey tool. If you're not talking the automated inbuilt native capabilities of the tool, and you're just talking, manually doing it, you can manually do anything you want to any document or series of documents if you're creative enough. But I have a feeling the question is more aimed at the particular tools, and like I say, I think you'd have to ask either the maker of those tools or somebody who's again, what I'm calling a power user of those tools. And I have a feeling there's a lot of them that are listening right now.
Yeah, cool. Question from Chris. He says, in between surveys, what can 7Signal do to help? And I can take that one. So definitely one of the use cases for our sensors and Sapphire Eye and our software and Mobileye is giving you extra RF visibility on an ongoing basis, including some of the things that you would look for in a site survey. So discovering code channel interference and adjacent channel interference and coverage problems and things like that you would measure in a site survey. You can get some insight with our tool. So appreciate that question, Chris. Another question here from a different Chris, who says, when doing an AP on a stick survey, do you try to do it during working hours with people or after hours with an empty building?
Well, the product says it depends. Next. Just kidding. Ideally, you would do your survey under the conditions where the wireless is actually going to be used the most for, production purposes, real operations. It's just not possible at times. But if you're allowed to be there when things are really happening, that's where you're absolutely going to get your most value. Whether it's the AP on a stick or whether it's a live survey of an existing environment that you've inherited, whatever. If you can be there during what I call typical operational conditions, absolutely you're going to get your best value during those times.
Yeah, and one last question here, Lee. I mean, given the variability in survey results, even just between engineers that are doing the surveys, even with the same tools, how do you account for that in your designs? Because I think sometimes, we see the survey and it says, it's neg 67 is my design requirement, and I can see I'm right there in neg 67, so I'm good to go because my survey is, the end all be all. It's the RF truth. But, to your point that you illustrated today, depending on who's doing the measuring tool, the adapters, changes in the environment, there's variability in those results. So how do you account for that when you're, doing designs?
Well, the more accuracy you can bring to it from any number of directions, the more accurate you're going to be. As silly as that sounds, your walls, if you can actually measure your walls, if you can actually get the attenuation of the walls, versus guessing, well, that's going to be more accurate. If you can get more sample points, that's going to result in more accuracy. Rather than when you do your walkabout, rather than having 100 little green dots on the map, if you've got 500, chances are you're going to be more accurate. The more places you're sampling, the more accurate you're going to be. If your maps are properly, your floor plans and maps are properly scaled, and you've done due diligence to get the walls in, properly and accurately, and tried to account for features like gigantic glass, weird statues, and in a lobby or whatever, any number of. You're never going to be totally accurate. You can't account for everything, but the more that you can account for and bring into your design, the more accurate you're going to be, right down to the offset of the tool for the expected devices that you're going to be supporting, and all of that. Just more is better as long as that more is accurate.
Gotcha. Cool. Don, do we have time for one last question?
Yeah, I think we do. We're right on time right now.
So yeah, one last quick question from Craig. Do you draw walls in Ekahau for AP on a stick surveys or just desktop designs?
I do it for everything.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why you wouldn't. I'd be curious to hear what the thought is behind not doing it. And maybe there's a reason, but I'm taken aback that somebody wouldn't do the walls for an AP on a stick survey.
Yeah, I do it too, and I think part of it is the, in between those data points where you actually have hard survey data, Ekahau or whatever tool is doing predictive modeling again, right? Because if you don't have a data point from every single point on the map, it has to generate data, a predictive point. So in those areas, certainly having walls and other objects, if you can define, is going to increase that accuracy. All right, Don, I think that about wraps it up.
All right, Lee, excellent job today. Love the presentation. Jim, thanks for adding color. I appreciate it. Everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're going to shut it down. Please join us next Wednesday for another great webinar. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the weekend, all that fun stuff. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
See you, Lee.
See ya.